Hello and welcome to another episode of Ways to Better Living. This is your host Julio, as always, bringing you the episodes. And today's topic will be dealing with how can one identify what makes them who they are. As the topic says, what makes one them, in the sense of what makes you you, who you are. So, in going with this, usually, as I always do, I'll give a brief description. But since this one is to let you identify who you are as an individual, I cannot give you background of what the world thinks, but jump right into it as to giving example of how people think of who they think they are as to who they are. So, I know some of you might get confused and say, well, what do you mean by think who I am and who I am? It's, yes, you might think one thing of yourself, but the way you are on a day-to-day basis might not be what you think of yourself. So, meaning you might think one thing of yourself, but your attitude and your your action tells of someone else, and in that way, your action mostly tells of who you are, rather than your words. Some might be able to describe themselves in words, but mostly your action describes you better than your words. So, in diving into this, we'll give you, when you look in the world, no one wants to consider themselves to be a bad person, which is an evil person. Unless otherwise you're on a movie screen, you've got to portray a character that people see as good, but even though they do bad things, but yet still they still portray themselves as good. But that's not the case of who you actually are. As to no matter how someone might want to say they are bad and do this and all that, deep down they want you to see them as good. So even if they're saying those things, it's for you to see them as good, regardless, for you to still look at them as someone that you can say, I admire your qualities and want to be like that. And that is the reason why people always portray certain characters. But these characteristics you portray, is it truly you? Mind you, one thing that people do forget at times is that everyone have good in them, no matter who you are. You always hear people say their intention were good, they just go about it the wrong way. It's because that good in you always look to do what's good. But in carrying out what's good, that's where most people step out of line. Why? Because what the world portrays as good, when you put it under the microscope, it is not good. So now let's dive into some of these characteristics that people might show as to say of themselves, yet still portray different characteristics. One, you hear everyone talks about love, and everyone wants to be loved, and they want to love someone as well, which is something that No matter, even the evil person want to be loved. So, with saying that, does everyone understand what love is? Because when you ask someone to describe love, majority, even if they don't get the full understanding of love, the simple way they would describe it as respect, caring, and what? Honest, loyal. Those are the four major that people will associate with love. So, let's take the first one. Respect. I've dealt with this a few times, but in this case, we're going to go in a little bit in-depthly. I might have to do part 2 based on the time how I'm seeing it. But let me just carry on to see how far I get with this episode. Respect. I've mentioned the last few. It might not be not too much in detail in this podcast since I studied about how people view respect, and because now I'm just thinking about it, I know I have some places where I have something about respect and put it in this term. But how people view respect in the world, that is something that you have to earn, right? Okay, so how do someone earn respect? Because earning something is like you working and earn your wages. So you have to work on it and get it back. So what do you have to do for someone to pay you with respect? Think about that. I'm not going to jump anywhere else. I'm going to skip that while you think about that whole picture for a minute. I might not continue with this particular one in this episode, but you think about that as to how you can earn respect, as to you put in your day's work and earn your pay at the end of it. So think about that. The next one I mentioned is caring. Now, in caring for someone, how do you say you care for someone? That's another question where a lot of people, because of the way the world says you have to care, that has also been lost in what it actually means to care for someone. So now, what would you think of caring for someone? So I think this episode I'm just going to not go through and explaining these 4 things as to what it means, and just let you think about this till I do the next episode. Caring. What do you make of caring for someone? How do you care for someone? Now, the next one is honesty. Being honest. Everyone to be honest with them. Okay? So, if that's something you might put to yourself, that you're honest, are you really honest? How do you view honesty? Because the way you view it will help you remain in that line of being honest. So, the next one is loyal or loyalty. A lot of people use that, but are they really, by them saying that they're loyal, are they really? What do you make of it as someone being loyal? So these are the 4 that people will mention about love. But then, when they come to applying love, what do they expect the most? you spending money, especially this generation. If you do not spend money, what did you hear? You do not love me. So, but if you mention these things, I did not hear money in it. But that's what you hear these days with majority. You don't spend money, you do not love them. But if they define love, you don't hear money in it at all. Then, so now, by the way you understand these things, that helps you apply. Hello. So, what will be the next thing we want to consider? That another quality someone might say a lot of people said they are good person. So what is the understanding of being good? If someone asks you, what do you take of good? Says, well, that's something that I've thought about it. I know I've spoken about being good, how a lot of things that involve for you to say being good. But being good is, a lot of people will agree to it, but a lot will not have seen it to be as to this. Instead of me giving you because a lot of people got their own way of defining it. And so instead of me coming and give you several of these, I'll just give you the basic description of being good. Being good means you doing the right thing at all times. Not sometimes, at all times. That's how I describe good. Why? Because if you say you're good, you do not want to see anything going on that's not in the line of good goes on around you without you speaking up about it for it to be good. Even if you do not change the situation at that moment, yet you impact it with your words by letting everyone know that what's going on is not good, which is not right. So that's how I'll put good. And this is what everyone's majority describe themselves in that line, that I'm a good person. But when they do it, what makes them good is because they take care of people, majority financially. So that put them in the line of good. And being good, you don't have to have money for you to do good or be good. Because for you to be good, you have to do good. And to do good have to come from you know what's good. Because you are good, so you do good. Not sometimes, but all the time. Think about that. And then the last point I will make about example for this episode is, and the other thing that people mention about themselves as to who they are is, besides being love and good, and majority have dealt with this subject separately, which is being responsible. So if you knew, you can go back to past episode that deal with that particular topic of being responsible, and then you understand more of it. And a lot of people associate themselves to that. So since my time is almost up, I will leave it here for you till the next time that I continue with the part 2, which probably part 3 will be coming up after that. I leave it here by saying this, your host as always, Coolio, saying God bless you and have a wonderful time.